Okay, so let's look at this case from Kent, the case of chronic arthritis, and I'll walk you through this and let's see how he manages the follow up of this case and what we can, what insights we find in those. I've sort of put in my insights and we'll go through this flow chart. So, this is a lady about 38. She has been an invalid since about 10 years because of chronic arthritis of the left knee, and she's been treated by conventional people, but she's not actually progressed at all. And then note on the dates because it's important as we go through this. It's a case that has been followed up for about 2 years, so it's a big one, but it's a beautiful case to understand this process. So Kent was basically called, and she found the knee was extremely painful and sore and edematous, and she could not move, sit up. Basically, it was very, very painful from motion, and there was great burning in the soles. So, the remedy he gave her was sulfur 55 mg, one dose, dry dose of Saclac. So, one dose of sulfur with Saclac, which would be placebo to continue, right? Now, let I've just put down my reasons for why he's given that. Obviously, he hasn't put any reasons, but we can elicit why sulfur was given. So, if you look at Herring's Medica, we have dropsy of the knee joint, synovitis, and inflammation, and then all those different observations of what he's seen in the case. Plus, the main thing for me was burning in the feet and wanting to put them out in a cool place. And she comes, her husband comes the next day, and he says, she's been very, very worse. She suffered greatly during the night. She's lots of body pain. Now let's see what he does, what Ken does. So he goes to visit her, and he tells her, you have to bear the suffering because it's going to pass. And he gives her more placebo till the 20th of August, which is about a month. And he gives her also a dose of sulfur 81 mg, dry dose, in case she needs it in the future. So what happens is, this is what he thinks was a homeopathic aggravation, which is aggravation followed, which will be followed by amelioration. That's what he predicts. So all he wanted to do was wait and watch. That's the reason he gave a placebo, and repeat the remedy if it's required in the future, in higher potency. And then, on September the 1st, there is another follow up, and the pain basically subsided. So what happened was the aggravation was actually followed by an amelioration, and she's now moving about the house on crutches. So that's a month later. So what he does was he gives her nothing, there's no medicine required. So basically wait and watch. And again, the reason for that would be because in any case of prolonged amelioration means the remedy that has been given in the past is still working. All we need to do is wait and watch. Then she comes, or she calls him on the 20th of September, and she says her husband actually passed away because he had been sick and he was under allopathic treatment, and she was nursing him. And what happened, so she's very, very nervous, and the knee is much more painful now. So now in this case, it's quite important to see what he does. And what he does was he gives her Ignatia for some days until the sad occasion has passed, and then he thinks about getting back to the knee. So on October the 8th, she's taken that sulfur 81, the powder which he had given her way back here. That was the first repetition of sulfur that she does. So what my insight from here is that any acute state that came up, which was from another specific exciting factor, which was the death of her husband, he went and gave an acute intercurrent to take care of the acute. And then he went back to the baseline remedy, because that baseline remedy, sulfur, in his understanding, did not cover the acute. So quite an interesting learning here. We go further. She comes on the 12th of November. The joint's grown smaller, the foot's not so swollen, there is no burning, appetite's good, she's gaining strength, and she's much better. So, what he does, no medicine. So, again, something quite important. She is now responding to that sulfur. The sulfur is still working here. So, there is but and there is most of the symptoms of sulfur are now gone, like the burning, the edematous, the joint the inflammation, that's gone. So there are no new symptoms for any other further remedy. Plus the sulfur is still working. So all you need to do is wait and watch and see what happens. She comes on December the 3rd. And then, so this is again a month. So most of the follow-ups, if you see, have been after a month. So there's a 1 month difference. She says now there is coldness of the feet from every change of weather. So the weather is now grown a little bit cooler. Warm to cold gave her pain, and she's difficulty in keeping them warm. She's craving for eggs. So what does he do? He gives her calcarea carb 85 m and Saclac for a month, so followed by placebo. So just 1 dose of calcarb. And I don't need to tell you why, because these are new symptoms. They're no longer sulfur symptoms anymore. So it indicates a new remedy, and the new remedy is calcarb. Coldness of the feet, aggravation from motion, aggravation from drafts, and desire for boiled eggs. So she comes on again a month later, and she's much more comfortable. She's sleeping, the feet have become warm, not much pain, swelling's gone, she's walking about, the sensitiveness is also going away, and she's more or less doing quite well. So again, just take Saclac, which is again placebo, and then he just follows her on. And there were 2 different or 3 times, or I think twice, he's repeated 85 m of calcarea. So basically the same potency that he's given in the top here, he repeated from January to April. He repeated them on 2 different occasions, and the reason was, whenever the amelioration, so because she was doing quite well, he gave her Saclac, but the repetition was done only when the progress was extremely slow or stopped, and calcarb was still indicated. So now this is quite interesting. Now she's moved on to the calcarb state. She was in a sulfur state before, and now he's getting the best out of calcarb, and he's repeating the same remedy as long as it's indicated, and the same potency, because there is no need for any higher potency. So it's still working, right? So the potency which works, you just carry on. And then she comes on the 3rd of May, and then she says there's no change. So yes, there's no change from the last date, but there are no new symptoms coming up. She's eating well, she's sleeping well, the joint more or less looks well, but it's not progressing any further. So at this stage, what does he do? Now here, actually what he's written is, he is a bit confused whether he should repeat or whether he should wait, and he decides to still wait. And it's quite interesting why he must have decided to wait. For me, this is an incomplete amelioration. I mean, calcarb is doing something, obviously, but somehow it has stopped working. So it's no longer indicated. However, so repeating it is obviously not going to do anything because it's no longer indicated. But there are no new symptoms for any other new remedy. So there's nothing to really prescribe on in the future. And he's already repeated it twice in the past. So in this case, he just waits, and then on the 3rd of June, which is a month later, she comes with a new set of symptoms. Sour eructations that burn the pharynx. Knees are again more painful. She's restless, and there's drawing and pain in the knee and the gnawing in the tummy. So in this case, he gives her lycopodium 7M. So now this is the third remedy because there have been a new group of symptoms which indicate that remedy, and a month of sac-lac again. Now, the reasons are quite clear why lycopodium. It has all these symptoms of, again, I took those from Allen's herring, so everything tastes sour, heartburn, water brash, and gnawing the tummy. Now she comes back on the July the 2nd, and she says when she took lycopodium 71, the knee got very painful just a day after the dose. She was right, she had to keep in bed, but now she's walking and there's little pain. However, she had a day of aggravation. So it's interesting, she had an aggravation on sulfur. She did not have an aggravation on calcarea carb. She again has an aggravation on lycopodium. And this is where he decides to basically keep her on placebo, and he goes on. So this is again a homeopathic aggravation. An aggravation followed by amelioration is a homeopathic aggravation. If it is not followed by amelioration, it means the remedy is wrong. But in this case, it did. So all he did was give sac-lac. And he repeated lycopodium on the 2nd of September and 15th of December. So the process here is the same. Whenever there is a homeopathic aggravation, he basically waits and watches because it is followed by amelioration. And during the process of the amelioration, he does not repeat. He repeats only if the amelioration slows down or stops. That is the time. So basically, he's repeating once in 2 or 3 months. So the remedy actually continues to work for about 1 or 2 months, just on one single dose. In between that whole time, he keeps her on sac-lac. So now she comes a year later in early January in 1883, and the patient is in good flesh. The knee is the only thing that still gives her trouble. So the knee is not completely healed. There is still limited motion, and it's not much painful. It's like much better. But she goes around the yard and she goes out on the road, and she doesn't use the crutches anymore. So one side, he advised her to take a cane and get one crutch off, but she doesn't have the sensitivity and the fear of being hit, and which has been a very important factor in the case. So he waits and watches. Nothing, no prescription. We'll just see how it unfolds, because on many levels, on a deeper level, she's doing well. I mean, at a pathological level, it's not completely healed, but otherwise, internally, she's much, much better. So no new symptoms. Lyco is still indicated for him. He doesn't do anything. On 8th of July, so this is basically 6-7 months later. So she was without any medication for about 6-7 months, and now she has an attack of rheumatism, pain in both knees, restlessness, stiffness of the joints, which passes off by motion. She's much better by motion. And this is the time he takes her to Rustox. So 1 m in water every 3 hours. Now this is quite important to note that he's always given her a dry doses. So calcarea, sulfur, lycopodium, all of them were dry doses. One dose which lasted for months. Nothing else was repeated in between, only placebo. Whereas this is like an acute attack where he's given Rustox in water. So he's chosen to use water potencies, and repetition is every 3 hours because the pace of the disease for me is high. So new symptoms, new remedy indications. He does not think lycopodium is indicated, but we can see how, because Rustox is quite indicated strongly, while liquid potency probably because it's acute. So improved on July the 10th. Restlessness is gone, stiffness is much better. So this is about a month, 2 days later, when she says she's much improved. Now, she comes back on 5th of August. She's still improved. So now it's about a month, and she has done quite well on Rustox. and she's been given Rostox only at the start. But on the 5th of August, he does something interesting. She is doing well, but he goes off and goes to a higher potency, which is a one-off dose of Rostox. And so he changes to a dry dose. So that acute attack of rheumatoid, I'm assuming it's rheumatoid arthritis. We don't know what sort of rheumatism, because it's quite a late term at that point. I'm not sure whether it was rheumatoid arthritis, but we'll consider it was that. And so he's now gone to a dry dose of Rostox and Saclac. So probably what's happening is she's improving, so the acute attack has passed, and he thinks now the chronic also needs Rostox, and he goes high potency one dose. Now, on September the 1st, that is 1 month later, because he gives a month stock of placebo, right? She comes walking with one cane. So there's no more crutch. She moves around the house and shows him how well she can now walk. So there's a drastic shift here with that high potency of Rostox. And what he does is, now this is interesting. You would normally think, well, if she's doing well, you just wait and watch. He did that with lycopodium. Like for a whole 6 months, he did not actually give her any lycopodium. He just waited, right? But in this case, what he does is he repeats really aggressively, if you have to talk about his way of doing things, because he's now giving her Rostox 32M, the same potency, on the 1st of each month. So he gave her Rostox in August, then he gives her in October, and he gives it again to her in November. So 3 consecutive months, or 3 months in a row, he gives her Rostox 32M. And so the reason is she's dramatically improving, but he continues to dose her, which is quite different from the way he's actually done it in the past. And what happens then was, on 5th of December, she walks with the help of her cane 2 blocks to a streetcar and comes to the office without any cane. So now I think that was like a major improvement. Now she is walking without any support for the first time. So in the last 6 months, I think the Rostox was somewhere where he actually pressed on the accelerator. He actually dosed her quite rigorously, and he kept on. So for that acute attack, he gave her like an acute potency of 1 m every 3 hours. But once the acute went, in the chronic state, he actually gave her a dose of Rostox. Irrespective of whether she was improving, he still kept on giving her the dose every month. So I think there's a lot to learn from this case, not with just the way you prescribe, but also the way he changed the pace of how he was actually prescribing, and the potency changes as well, and the reputation. So I think there's a lot we can learn from this case here. And there's this distinct difference between what you learn in theory and what you do in practice. Because theoretically, it's written that you do not repeat the same unchanged potency until the dose is still working, because probably for fear of aggravation. And practically, what you see in this case, and also from my own experience, that in this case, for example, he with sulfur calcarb lycopodium, he did that. He waited, right? He did not repeat until the improvement was happening. But he did not do that with Rostox. And it is important to note that that was also the time when the changes and the improvement was the most efficient and the most fastest. And so what I think is you can repeat judiciously, especially in cases where there is absolutely no fear of aggravation. So in cases where the pathology is no longer structural, where there is much more functional changes, the susceptibility is much better, and what you can call as a Quintin Sora. Okay, when he started off with this case, when he gave her sulfur, remember there was psychosis which was very strong. There was stiffness, there was swelling, she was bedridden, she was an invalid possibly, and The susceptibility was very low. She's had loads of allopathic conventional treatment. But in 2 years, the susceptibility developed, the mild medically she changed. She went from psychosis to pure Sora. And this is when he just pressed the accelerator. This is when he started off with dosing her more often, regularly. And this is when she did not actually have any aggravation from the rust dogs. And the case just flew. So I think that's my take from this case. So it's okay to repeat. It's okay to do that in psoriatic cases, especially when there is functional pathology, and that is when you get the best out of the case. So hope you get a good idea of the differences between theory and practical aspects of follow-up management. And I think this is a great case to learn from. And Kent has some wonderful, wonderful cases. And this is what you need to experiment in your own clinic as well. You don't take everything by the book. You go and apply and understand and learn what are the pros and cons, where are the rules, and where you can go outside the box and change the rules, because practically it's important to see what's really working and what's not. So I would love to know what you think about this case, what you absolutely think about, the way he actually dosed and changed remedies and changed potencies, and yeah, I love to discuss that. So bring it on. Let's discuss in the comment section, and let's get the best out of this case. See you. Bye bye.